and myself also working on film projects right now to actually, help to draw my little straw to the stack, as it were, and just trying to show that there's so much out there. There's a wonderful world of mysteries and amazing, information out there, and this is what people should be into. Well, they should be into what they want to be into, of course, but they shouldn't be manipulated by the current status quo of everybody fitting into the same box and sitting in front of the stupid tube every night and just doing nothing. One thing I did wanted to ask you about that came up here was talking about cubes and cathedrals or churches, I guess. Recently in an article from the Telegraph, they actually was up at of course the Roslin Chapel has gotten so much attention now because of the Da Vinci Code and all this, but there was two guys up there, one called Stuart Mitchell, a composer and a Royal Air Force codebreaker. His father actually was up at the Roslin Chapel, and they said that they have found a code in the Roslin Chapel, and even connecting this with formations actually that was photographed on Saturn lately. In the article, it says basically like this: now cosmology has been added to this rich brew after the ornate symbols on its walls were likened to giant cloud formations photographed on Saturn. And it basically tells about the story about Stuart and this other guy, his father, and that they found a hidden in here was 13 angel musicians and 213 cube-like shapes carved into the chapel. Is this something you have looked at all? Have you heard about this?
No, and I would be very interested in any websites that you could email me about that. I'm extremely fascinated because Saturn is Chronos, which is time.
That's right.
And Saturn is also Set or Satan, which is the fixing of or the setting of time. So evil, as it were, by symbolically defined, evil is when you become set in your ways. When you fix time to a certain point and then you don't want to go any further, as many people do in their lives. They find one thing that they like and then that's it. They don't do anything else.
Yeah.
And this is what the ancients defined as evil, or as Sat or Saturn. And Saturn is an amazingly interesting planet. It not only for the fact that it has a hexagonal rotation pattern in its clouds,
exactly.
which again, when you realize that the very inner cube of the cube of space is, of course, six-sided, which is a hexagon, so we can see that Saturn's cloud formations rotate in a hexagonal pattern, which means that Saturn is in effect a gigantic cube. And since so what I'm saying is it's very possible that the outer hypercube that surrounds the inner hypercube, which is the Earth, the outer hypercube is defined by the rotation of Saturn. I know this sounds really way out, and I would need 5 hours to really explain myself. But for those of you who are perceptive enough to understand what I mean symbolically, you can go and look for yourself. Of course, we also know about the moon of Saturn, Iapetus, which is a very strange moon, which looks incredibly artificial, which has hexagonal crater patterns on it, and go figure that one out. And to make things even weirder, Iapetus is the moon in the original book, 2001: A Space Odyssey. The astronaut lands on Iapetus, where he discovers the black monolith, which is again a cube, which he then enters through and discovers not only the secret of time, but the transmutation of the human genome into the star child. And this happens in the book 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke on the moon Iapetus. And I would advise all of you to go to my good friend Richard Hoagland's site, theenterprisemission.com, and read his 6-part article on Iapetus for a real head-scratcher. Because while Richard may not understand the mythological aspects of Saturn, or the aspects of the alchemical aspects of Saturn, he does understand the scientific value of what he's looking at, whereas no one else does. What's even more interesting about all of this is that there are ancient Gnostic texts which say that the archons, these invisible dark beings that seem to like to suck life from human beings, come from Saturn.
Really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
all these things play into something which, you know, if I wrote a short story or an article, no one would believe me. In 2005, I don't know if they played it anywhere else, but in the United States, they played a 6-part TV series. I think it was called Revelation or something. It looked like it was funded by the Catholic Church. I'm not sure who was doing it, but it was very definitely a Christian 6-part thing about a scientist racing forth to stop the world or the devil, the Satan, from destroying the world. And it wasn't a very good series or anything, but what was interesting about it was the series ended up saying that Satan lived on Saturn.
Really?
The very last shot in the series was a dolly into Saturn spinning with the dark moon of Iapetus rising underneath it. And, you know, I don't know what it meant, but I just thought, you know, that is the strangest coincidence, you know, that I've ever witnessed. And so to this day, I don't know what any of that means, and I'm working on it. But Saturn is definitely playing some kind of role within what's going on a cosmic and a spiritual level with the human race. And of course, we know that that Father Time, who is the Grim Reaper, who holds a scythe, right?
Yeah.
And harvests the souls, right? That is the symbol for Saturn.
That's right, exactly. You know, I was reading yesterday an article or document, I guess it is, that actually is originally from the Nag Hammadi library called the Hypostasis of the Archons. Have you read that?
I have. What a hair raiser.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. And again, this actually, the reason I did this was because it connects with a film project we're working on, a short film right now that has to do with actually with the archons or the name. We're just trying to figure out the root of the name, because some have attributed the archons to be basically the Greek rulers, but I think that they got this name from the Gnostic sources to begin with from the start.
I agree.
And there seems to be here, when I read the document, that there seems to be some kind of obsession with life and death overall. I of course want to connect this with the longevity research that we're doing right now for this short film, but there seems to be some kind of connection with, of course, even the serpent that you talked about before, with the apple, with the knowledge of all of this, and that this has to do with death. The question, I guess, is if you know, or if you have any theories or ideas, if these archons in some way are actually trying to either live forever through our bodies, if they actually can possess human bodies, meaning that these actually are like demons that can or walk-ins, as they call it, that can possess human bodies, and therefore are trying to find some way, if it is technological or genetic or whatever, to actually be inside a human being that has the capability of living forever. Is there anything in that I've just said that kind of that sparks your interest, as it were?
I would say just about everything you just said sparks my interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think. In fact, if God willing, I'm still alive, say 10, 15 years from now, and I can still walk around and function in this world, I have a movie that's going to cost about $300 million to make. Oops. Called The Archons, and that is exactly what happens in the film. Basically, I contrived a device in the screenplay where a guy has a crystal, which comes from Saturn, by the way, and he can devise the crystal to allow himself to see archons. And so, but he doesn't know it at the beginning. He just has the crystal, and he's attending a football game at the beginning of the film, and he has to go to this football game. He doesn't want to go to it. This is an American football game, very violent sport, and he activates the crystal because he's bored at the football game, and he suddenly sees that the stadium is attracting in thousands and thousands of archons who are coming in and sucking the negative energy out from all the people screaming and yelling and demanding more violence out on the field. And that's what I think. And I think that they get into you. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about this yet, but I think that they get into you. At least this is what the Gnostics believed. And they can get into you and control you. And so I think everybody's had that moment where something happened to them where they got so angry that it felt like another force had taken them over temporarily. And I think that might be the archonic forces coming in. As for living forever, I would say that the archons would like nothing more than a drugged out humanity who lives a long time but is not human anymore, completely archonic and taken over. And this is why I advise people to be very wary of channeling, of any kind of contacting spirits and things, not because I don't believe that that's true, but I don't know how the hell you can tell if you're contacting an archon or not. And so I say just stay away from the whole thing. Why bother make that phone call? Because you may be opening yourself up to these energy forces. And again, it's astonishing, but I have an ancient text from the Hebrew which talks about these archons and how they have lizard skin and bat-like wings, and a complete description of them.
Really?
And it's absolutely make your blood run cold reading this.
My God, do you know if that's available somewhere online?
No.
Okay. Damn it. Okay.
No. This is something that a very wealthy man had in his library and showed me when I brought up the subject. And it's a midrash from a rabbi from like 1100 in south of France, which is where this began again. This anti-archonic Gnostic ferment began again, and was, of course, destroyed in the Inquisition against the Cathars. And the Cathars were not only Gnostics, but they believed in archons, and they believed that, Europe had been taken over by archons.
Sheesh, wow, that's amazing. What a story. And, I mean, again, it's regarding the film project that you just mentioned, I mean, money in itself is no obstacle, of course, in that sense that money is just a tool that we use. Of course, there is a problem in gaining that amount of money that you mentioned in order to make such a production become real, so to speak, or make it real. But I mean, again, how's your kind of your view or I guess attitude on such an idea, meaning that $300 million, that is something you don't, just scrap up every day. Exactly. I mean, how is your attitude towards such an idea? Do you think that ever will be possible for you to do a project like that?
Well, 5 years ago I would have said absolutely not. A year ago I would have said maybe. Now I think so. I think that something's happened, and there's been a turning of the tide, and I think that people are beginning to really, really get concerned about what's going on. So, I don't know. I have different suits that I wear. One suit is a skeptic, one suit is the alchemist, one suit, is the eternal optimist.